I'll tweet out a link.
Cool. And we live? We're live.
Yes, we are.
Hello to people.
Hello to the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And hello to you, Mr. History. Or can I call you Step Back? I don't know.
You can call me Tristan. No worries.
Tristan, okay.
Oh,
That's not the name of the name of the channel though. So you fry in my brain with all these different names.
You can call me. It's all right. I think we can make an exception this time around. What's it called? Step Back's my cartoon me. All right, so people are showing up. Hello, viewers. So this kind of came out of nowhere, but yeah, I always fan of watching the long streams that you and your community get up to. So I thought I would set one up of my own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how long this one will go, but we've got plenty to talk about, so it should be fun. Whatever that is, whatever we end up talking about in the end.
It's true, and test out what the random streams are like. YouTube likes when you stream now, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, apparently so. I'm not entirely sure why they're doing that. Well, I know in the sense that they want to make it into like a TV thing, but I don't know.
Either way, here we are. I had a whole list of intellectual smarty pants things to talk about, but then since you're kind of like the David Futrell of YouTube, I think there's only one thing we need to talk about right now, and that is, and you're also a British person, so congratulations on your non-binary person of color, Wolfkin doctor.
Yes, yeah. Apparently the world is going to come to an end because a two-hearted regenerating alien has a vagina now. Oh my god.
Oh man. So I imagine
I'm dubbing it the vagina apocalypse.
Vagina apocalypse. Oh goodness. So how has I imagine that you've got your fingers on the pulse of right-wing reactionary Twitter much more than I do. How's it going down?
Well, you've got two main reactions. You've got some people going, "Oh, there's no reaction to this. It's fine. People are just looking for reasons to complain." And then the rest of them are like, "Oh my God, there's a woman. It's a woman playing a role that's previously been played by a man. This is the worst thing ever, apparently." And there was genuinely someone sent out a tweet, which I was linked to because I released a video. If you want to go and check it out on my channel, chronicling some of this, and but under that, someone linked me to a Twitter comment from someone saying, SJWs infect everything. There's no point going on living. Which is just, I mean, that's a man-baby meltdown of epic proportions. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, like that's a lot of to give up over like a TV show changing the actor that plays its main character. That's happened 13 times, and it's like what 55 years of existing now, or 54 years of existing.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's time, but it's the same problem you have every time he regenerates. Is that it goes through? There's actually like a cycle that there is where it starts off as this new person's going to be shit. I hate this new person. Fuck this show. To he's okay. That's okay. Yeah, he's not too bad. To oh my god, he's the best thing ever. And then when it comes around to regeneration time, because obviously actors leave and a new actor comes in, they go, you can't get rid of this person, even though 2 years earlier they were saying how shit they were. And then the same cycle continues. Only this time, because it's a woman, a fucking misogynistic circle jerk of the internet has gotten involved as well with people who, frankly, Doctor Who has certainly a liberalish, left-leaning sort of a bias mostly. So the people who are complaining about this aren't watching it anyway. They're not fans of the show. So why are you even commenting, really? Like, if you're that butthurt about this, then virtually everything the Doctor ever says on any social topic, you would be offended by as well. So you're clearly not actually a fan of the show. So shut up.
Oh man, I actually had tuned the show out for a little bit because I think it was like the 9th season or whatever was such a disappointment that I was just like, the show's kind of hitting the skids a bit. I'll come back later.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're also getting rid of Stephen Moffat, who's the head writer chap, and bringing in some new, fresh writers, which should be good as well because it had gotten a little stale, frankly. He did okay because he was just sort of contrast to the previous Doctor. So But
Yeah,
I mean, I'm actually really excited for it, and I don't think it will harm things enormously at all.
yeah. Didn't they
Actually, if
tap
anything,
like the new showrunner is like the guy who ran Broadchurch, right?
yeah, which I mean, she was involved with that as well. Um, yeah, she was in that show as well, and we know
Mhm.
she's a good actor. This is the thing they say: oh, the best person for the job should get the job. Okay, well, we know she's a good actor. We've seen her in several things. She was in Attack the Block and Broadchurch and Black Mirror and things like that. And she's clearly a very talented actress. So shut up, like she's clearly perfectly fine for the role.
Yeah, and if like, all right, so we got her name's Jodie Whittaker, and then
Yes.
we've got a new showrunner who also comes from Broadchurch. Now, Broadchurch had probably the best first season of any TV show I've seen in probably a decade. Um,
Did that make it over to America then, Broadchurch?
maybe not, but I think they made an Americanized version of it, and it was such a disaster that it got canceled. But
They
I
always. This is the thing. Outside of the American office, very few British shows that get remade in America ever work. You should just
and
make
don't
your
forget
own
House of
fucking
Cards.
shows. You're very good at it, actually. House of Cards. Well, yes, yeah, that's true.
And I don't live in the United States, luckily, so I get we still have a little bit of the BBC flavor. That's
Oh,
still I'm
whereabouts,
a
if you don't mind?
Canadian.
Oh, you're Canadian. Oh, I do apologise. This is the thing. You know, there's the sort of racist thing of, oh, you all sound alike. Well, to British eyes, unless you start saying a boot and a at the end of every sentence, then I can't tell the difference between a Canadian and American. Frankly, I just
Yeah,
can't.
that happened actually the last time I was in the UK. Is that anytime I went somewhere, I'd talk to them, and people would ask me like, what part of the United States are you from, and I would say I was Canadian, and it would be followed by this was 2007, so it was peak like Bush times. It was followed by like profuse apologies and like
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know actually on a similar level. I know a couple of Americans, one of whom still lives here actually, who during the Bush period would tell people they were Canadian
oh,
because they didn't want to be associated with America. Now that's grim, fucking hell. But fair enough. I mean, that's understandable.
those were dark times. Were
Yes, well, indeed. Although, I mean, did Canada a part of was it the called it now the Coalition of the Willing?
No, we were actually very surprisingly not part of it. There's this conspiracy theory that came up because the year that um, we had our prime minister's name was Jean Chrétien back then, and even though he was kind of like a terrible centrist dude, he caved to pressure from our version of the Labour Party, I guess. Our politics are a little different, but he took pressure from the left and basically said that Canada wasn't going to join the coalition of the willing, and the United States got very, very grumpy with us to the point where the conspiracy comes in, which is that same summer was when a cow in Alberta that mysteriously came from North Dakota was discovered to have mad cow disease. And as a British person, I'm sure you know how significant that is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
So
they
what? So
banned Canadian beef for a while. And
oh right. So the theory was that they'd send one stray cow into Canada, and so they could ban the beef sales.
yeah, I mean,
that, that is the
it was a bad
shittiest.
year.
That is the shittiest Alex Jones move I've ever heard. That's terrible.
It could have been easy to do though. You just send one bad cow. But at the same time too, if you remember, do you remember the SARS epidemic?
I do. Yes. Yes.
So SARS, like Toronto was like a huge SARS place, and so
Yeah.
that also like depressed
It was a
tourism and everything. And
hot destination for all your SARS. Absolutely. It was SARS was a big Canadian tourist destination.
yeah, and so we had a pretty rough year in 2003.
Yeah, that's well. I did not expect to be discussing SARS. I'll be honest, especially linking out with a Doctor Who discussion. That's I don't know. That's a bit odd.
It's
There
like
you
a
go.
it's like a fourth level segue there. But yeah, that was the fun story. But yeah, Canada wasn't part of the coalition of the willing. We never went to Iraq, and I think we just left Afghanistan. I think in 6 years ago, something like that.
All right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well. You missed out on all the fun of having your people killed in the desert for nothing and stealing brown people's oil. So,
Oh,
well, fuck you, Canada.
oh goodness.
Yeah.
We're a weird country though, because
Well,
people.
I quite like Canada in a way because it's so genuinely true that you are more likely to die of moose attack than terrorism in Canada, which is the most Canadian thing ever. That's genius. I love it.
And the only thing that I haven't been very proud of Canada for a lot of things because we are, we're still a very colonialist nation that committed genocide and all the wonderful things that come with being part of the settler colonies. But
It, you can generally tell a big colonial nation outside of the actual major ones from Europe because they've got straight lines as borders.
mhm.
It's ridiculous. Like if you've literally just put a ruler on a map and drawn a line across tribal lands, that's pretty rough. Yeah.
There's actually a pretty funny story about that because when we were to draw the U.S. Canadian border map, it's not actually a straight line. The funny thing is that back in those days when they had to figure out what the map was going to be, they actually sent out a couple guys with like sticks, and they had them walk across the continent with sticks. And there was no GPS back then, so it's actually, if you look at it like really really low down, it's like a zigzag because they just like kind of followed a compass across um,
Oh,
one of the largest bodies of land. It's just so
well,
crazy.
there you go. Well,
So I
I
think,
don't know if this is necessarily an urban myth or not, but I quite like the story of I think it was one of the Tsar Nicholas or whatever. When they were building the Trans-Siberian Railway, and he decided to build it in this area, so he put the ruler on the map and drew the line across, and his fingertips were sticking over the edge of the ruler. So there was like three little bumps in the actual line, and rather than displease the Tsar, they literally built the railway along those bumps.
that at least, even if the story is not true, it does say something about Russian politics in a very beautiful way, because that is still like very much. I
Vladimir
had
Putin, if Vladimir Putin tells you to build a railway with finger marks on it, you fucking build the railway. Otherwise, you get the Gulag treatment, or you
yeah,
get the polonium in the tea treatment or something. You know.
yeah. Well, there's a long history of stuff like that because like one of the things that people have told me, I have a friend who works in Soviet archives, and that is like uh, if you want, you know, evidence to say something, if you're the boss, they'll find the things that'll let you say what you want to do. Like there's like this kind of very authoritarian um, office culture or something there. It's really strange. I did get
Yeah.
somebody ask me a question. I did get a question from the chat, and that was my thoughts on someone you're very familiar with, um,
Yes.
one of your compatriots. Um,
Uh, well, you're gonna have to narrow it down slightly. There's a few of us.
oh yes, Carlos L. Benjamin.
Oh, Mr. of Swingcad. Yes, he's
Mr. Carl of Swindon.
well, yeah. As the question was aimed at yourself, why don't you answer first, and I'll give you a little bit of
All right.
after.
So mercifully, I've been able to avoid his channel because I found people tearing him down a peg before I ever found his channel, and so I knew what he was all about before I ever had to watch a video. Um, man, what a dick! He just, I
Yeah.
don't know. He does seem like, because like you and I both were like YouTubers back in like the olden days of the atheist
Well,
shitlord.
I was around. I wasn't making videos, but my account, if you go, you can even go and check now. It started in 2006, so we're talking old school, yeah, atheism days. So
So I can kind of see a little bit of that in him, but it just seems like this is like this generation of people, him and TJ and some other people. Although, Carl's not that old, but he seems to be part of this tradition of just men in their 30s who never grew out of like your 16-year-old edge lord type mentality.
yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Actually, a prime example of that, and I released a video on this early in the week, was they actually had a meetup. Some of the very people you're talking about, Sargon was there, and V, who some people will know was there and whatnot. And one of the things they did was drunkenly invade a children's school, not school, sorry, a children's playground, and raise a Kyrgyzstan flag at the top of like a climbing frame, like a kid's climbing frame in the park, and start screaming "re" and was it "Go home, normies," and swearing rather loudly in front of a group of children. Because this is what's happened: a group of men, like you say, men largely in their sort of late 20s, 30s through to maybe the 40s, who never grew out of being a 12-year-old sort of, edgy little prick, who have been insulated in that bubble on the internet, go out into the real world and they don't know how to behave. They have no concept of social mores at all.
Yeah, I think the thing though where Sargon's, or I'm going to call him Carl because Sargon of Akkad is a real historical figure who has who's important in the history of Western civilization and should not be associated with this person. He's so when I was at VidCon, I didn't meet him. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting him. I saw the IHOP photo, but I didn't ever run into him. But what I did do is that during my time there, I got to meet with people like Anita Sarkeesian, and I got to meet with do you remember the brief run of Crash Course Human Geography?
Oh, I can't remember. I've seen Crash Course stuff, and I can't remember the human geography thing now.
But it was a series of Crash Course that was run by somebody who, by a friend of mine. I'm not going to like bring her into the conversation without permission, but basically Sargon made a video about her, and because maybe it wasn't the best Crash Course series research wise, his video and the pressure from that basically had them tear down an entire Crash Course series that they had already filmed and invested in. And like when you meet with the education people and you talk to a lot of people, you realize that this is a guy who's actually done damage to people's careers. And there's a lot of people that I was talking to that have had actual negative effects on their careers and their lives and their sanity created by this person. And it's like, how can this one person he's like the definition of toxic. And I feel like maybe when you see everything as just, words and letters on the internet, it doesn't sink in as much as when you like talk to people who are like, yeah, we had to like tear down this thing we invested like thousands and thousands of dollars into because of one video by a guy who can't read more than the abstract of an article. And it's like, oh
God. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To quote a great woman, he's a garbage person. He really is.
You know what's the one thing about Anita Sarkeesian that I thought when I met her that was the most strange thing that you'd never expect?
She had 3 legs.
Close. No, she's a very, very friendly, but also she's a very short lady.
Sure.
I did not notice that until like I met her, and I was like, oh, like, 'cause I mean, it's not. It's one of the things that I like that I learned at VidCon was that like apparently if you want to make videos on the internet, you have to just be like grotesquely tall.
That is a phenomenal description. I'm 6'1", which is that grotesquely tall? It's just a bit tall, I think, isn't it?
That's the same height that I am, but like I think that like 6'1" was like the average height of a vlogger that I met there, and there's a lot of people who are taller, like all those things. And then in that crowd, ContraPoint is like probably a bit taller than me when I met him.
Are you sure you didn't wander into like a basketball arena or something?
No, but then in that whole like gaggle of people, then there's Anita Sarkeesian, and she's probably like 5 even.
Wow.
And she just commands the room because she's a legend, and it's just such a fascinating thing to see.
Well, actually, that's I suppose part of the thing. You can have obviously these negative repercussions, but it can backfire in some senses on people like Carl, because Anita Sarkeesian would never have been the star that she is, and she's like genuinely famous even sort of outside of the internet now. She's actually like a person, a figure of some sort. And she would never have had that stage at all if it weren't for the likes of Carl viciously going after her needlessly, because ultimately what is she doing? She's doing video game critique on the internet. I mean, that's Why is that important? Why do you have to like start an army of pricks about that?
Mm-hmm. So I actually have one question for you, and this is something that I've been trying to keep abreast of on the internet in the last few weeks that I would really like to get, because I know that you keep tabs on these things much better than I do.
You set me up to fail here because I probably won't know it now.
oh no, it's everywhere on the internet.
Okay.
When you make your Descent of Manosphere episode in the near future, that will be the inevitable Descent of Manosphere episode about Lacey Green. Will you be able to tell the story about what happened?
What do you mean? Hang on. What do you mean? What happened? What's the what happened there?
Like, how did Lacey Green go from a subject in your Descent of Manosphere series to someone who could, in the near future, I could see being a subject of an episode?
Well, there's a problem with that, and this is going to be the problem. I can see the need for there to potentially be that episode in the future. And the story I'd like to tell, I don't know that I'll be able to tell because I've gotten it through people who have known her in real life, people who were former sort of comrades in arms, as it were. And I'm not sure it would be. I would be it would be the route to necessarily reveal that information. Not that it's nothing illegal. Like Lacey hasn't done anything actionable or anything silly like that. Just that I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily revealing that. So what I'll probably do is just if that video ever gets made, which I'm hoping it won't have to, because that will be grim. Because like you say, I did the inevitable bit about Lacey Green in defence of her when I felt she needed defending, whereas now she's got all these people eating out the palm of her hand for the short term. In the long term, she'll say something vaguely liberal and they'll attack her again because that's what these fucking scum do. But in the short term, they've got her in her hand, so I don't have to defend her. So I'm not doing that part of the series anymore. But if that video ever does need to be made, I'll come at it from the perspective of, oh well, she's just doing it for money, because in essence, she sort of is doing it to keep herself relevant. Even though bizarrely, she's now thrown her career away because there's no way she can be a sex ed communicator anymore in the real world because no one's going to touch her.
It's depressing. So, like, if I got the story right, so she is the sex positive. Like, I don't know. Like, okay, so she's an MTV person for a while, and then then she had her own sex positive series, which I imagine she worked with some sponsor on that one. I don't know, but it seems like she stepped away from the internet for a while. And
well, she was, having briefly mentioned the early days of YouTube atheism, she was an early YouTube atheist. She's been around on the internet for years.
I remember Go Green 18. I remembered I was a subscriber of hers when she was really little channel.
Yeah, well, that's actually still her Twitter handle. She still comes from that school. And then she sort of went away for a while. I think possibly to college, if I recall. And then she sort of came back and started doing the sex education stuff. And it was Sex Plus was her kind of the brand, as it were, of her videos. And then she got the MTV Braless show, which was okay. I mean, it wasn't brilliant or anything, but it was okay. And she got quite big. And then I think she's become disillusioned even. But during that time, and waited rather cynically. And this is the thing; it is ultimately incredibly cynical from start to finish. Really, once the MTV gig was up, she just decided, well, fuck it, I'm going to go shitlord. I don't know at what point she started dating Chris Reagan or getting to know him and those people, but it seems played the game. And if you ignore the morality of it, she's played it very well. But she's played the game, and she wants to remain relevant on the internet, which is a shame in a way because YouTube isn't going to be what it is now forever. I don't think people are going to be able to earn their livings in 20 years' time just by randomly doing YouTube videos. I don't think that's going to be a thing that happens anymore. Yeah. And she's, like I say, she's thrown her real world career out of the window in order to pal around with some of the worst people on the internet. Brilliant.
Yeah, like I thought that sex positive was good, and I really thought that Braless was good. I mean, they're obviously for a different demographic than us. They were like for teenagers and such, but they were good for what they were. And I will say there was some good that came out of this whole exchange, and that is through the Twitter wars that have happened since. I've like, I didn't know about, oh gosh, the last name is, I did not know about Cat Black or Riley Dennis until this, and I was like, oh, these are two channels I now love.
Yeah, they are brilliant, actually. Yeah, anyone listening should go and subscribe to those two. They're fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's how you get to know these people. Like you mentioned, ContraPoints. One of the reasons that ContraPoints had something of a boost was when she went onto Blair White's channel and did that debate. And a lot of people that I know said, "Oh, I found ContraPoints through that." And that's sort of how that happens. That's how people put themselves out there. You know?
Yeah, I can't remember how I found ContraPoints, but oh man, that's been exciting channel to see take off.
Well, someone said, I remember how I found him. Someone said, "Do you want to see a man with a rhinestone swastika on his chest?" And I said, yes, I fucking do. And so someone linked me the video, and I binged his videos. It was brilliant. And actually, that's a really nice thing, a bizarre little thing that happens from time to time. And people, because when you like my video, if your channel, your YouTube channel is linked to your Twitter channel, it sends out like a tweet saying that I liked this video, and then I get the notification saying that. And so you can tell that someone sit there binge watching your videos on a day, because you get about a dozen messages from them, like each roughly the length of the video apart from one another. And so they clearly sit there listening, watching the videos, liking it, and then watching another one, liking it. And that's really nice. That's really touching that someone's found my work and likes it. That's a really nice aspect.
Who did that?
Oh, it happens variously. I've had several people do it. It happens like every couple of weeks. A random person who you didn't know before and they didn't know you, they discovered your channel and now they're binge watching your stuff. And that's quite nice, because you don't necessarily have to interact with that. I generally say thank you for watching my stuff, but you don't have to interact with it. But you know that there's someone, possibly even on the other side of the world, who's really enjoying it, and that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I'd like to tell a little bit about the story about I can't even remember now how I came across your channel, Kevin. It's been a very long time. I should say that at least. But like, oh gosh, I couldn't even. It's been probably a few years now. So,
yeah, well, I've been doing it about 2.5 years now. I've been making videos regularly. Yeah, and some of the people who've been around from the very start, I'm still friends with. Because that was nice. When I only had 80 subscribers, you'd get the same 2 or 3 people commenting on your videos.
Yes. Speaking of which, Omar and Stefan just came in the chat. Should say hi to them. They've been around for a long time.
Hello, Omar and Stefan. How are you? I'm not actually watching the chat though, so I can't see what you're saying. So you might as well just type some of the worst abuse about me you can, because I can't see it.
Say that your cat's coat is a little dull.
How fucking dare you? I said abuse me. You leave the fucking cat out of this. That cat is God.
There's some people writing doubts that he's actually French.
Well, Barack Obama had the same thing. These racist bastards. Jesus Christ. I'm not even going to bother with the cat's long French birth certificate. It's just not happening.
It's true. And you know how French is, the text is even longer, so it's huge. Now I just have images of a long time ago you carrying a tiny orange cat on the channel and how fun that would have been.
Oh, no, I didn't go and get him. He emerged into my life. I don't know how he arrived. He was just, one day I was sad and lonely, and then he was there. Very much like that poem about God, when you're walking on the beach and there's 2 sets of footsteps. Then all of a sudden, during the worst periods, there's only 1 set of footsteps. And all the time, Rory was carrying me. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Omar does say that he's a fan of the Descent of Manosphere.
Well, thank you, but I mean, there's lots. Go out and do something fun with your life. Don't watch my videos. My videos are depressing. Just go and enjoy your life. God damn it.
I've
I'm
asked
not
you on
very
a
good
few
at
occasions how you
self-promotion.
do it.
What was that, sorry?
How you do it, like for the stuff that you do, you and Dave Futurell probably have the same problem. Is how do you stay just sane when you have to dig through like the worst of humanity in order to make the content that you make?
Um, well, a combination of becoming desensitized and copious amounts of alcohol. Um, no, it's genuinely it's becoming desensitized to it. You essentially, and you do end up in a bizarre situation. I've had it several times where desensitized to it because I'm focused purely on getting the stuff I need to make the videos, right? So I'm not the fact that they're saying these horrific things sort of doesn't bother me anymore in the slightest. To the point where I'm looking for a certain thing, right? I'm looking for an example of this person saying something absolutely horrific. And when that happens, rather than going, "Oh my god, they just said this horrifically disgusting thing," inside I'm going, "Yes, they just said this absolutely fucking disgusting thing. That's brilliant for the video." And that's not a normal or good reaction to have to someone saying some horrific like rape apology or something. But that's because again, I'm become so desensitized to it that I'm just looking for the thing I need for the video. I don't give a fuck that these people believe this thing. I've come to terms with the fact that some segment of humanity are absolute fucking detritus, and so I'm not going to even bother with it. I'm just going to go out and examine them and expose their shit for the world. You know?
Sounds like you've sacrificed part of your soul for the good of humanity.
No, well, yes and no. I mean, I make videos obviously hoping that people will watch it and be enjoy it and will make them think. But ultimately, I do it because I couldn't stand not doing it anymore. I couldn't sit by on the side. Like I say, my channel, I've had it for years, and had the YouTube atheism, skeptic, whatever rationalist community not lurched pathetically to the right in recent years, I'd have never made a video ever. I'd have never, because it takes a lot to inspire the energy it takes to do these kind of things in me. And it has to be something really, really, really bad for me to even bother getting off my arse to do anything. And so it became so bad that I couldn't not do it anymore. I had to say something. I had to speak out against this because I'd seen what was, generally speaking, a rather good community doing something worthwhile and interesting into just a pile of dog shit.
So have you been following along ever since like I kind of took a Lacey Green-esque break to go to university as well?
Well, I mean, actually, I think possibly therefore I'm slightly older than you, in that I started watching YouTube when I was at university, actually. When I probably should have been doing something constructive and worthwhile with my life, I signed up to YouTube to watch bootleg copies of The Daily Show because that wasn't being broadcast on British TV at the time. That was before the whole Viacom thing and the copyright infringements and all of that.
Oh yeah, I imagine
and
we
so
are. If we are not the same year, I would imagine we are within 1 year of each other. I think we're both in our late 20s.
I turned 30 slightly less than a month ago.
All right, and I do that next year. So.
No, okay. Well, there you go. Well, yeah, like I said, I started watching YouTube then, and so I've been watching it pretty much ever since. Probably far too much. Actually, this is the first time I've ever thought about it, but I dread to think the just untold hours of my life wasted watching YouTube videos. I dare say it would shock me if, I mean, there's no way of knowing, but if someone could calculate that, that would be phenomenal and depressing because I've watched a lot of shit on YouTube in the years.
So maybe you can tell a story about what happened in the middle years, because I got off the skeptical, rational train around Elevator Gate, and then I disappeared into the shadows, and then came back and found that it had turned into a like neo-Nazi party, and I don't know what happened in those intervening years.
Well, that's essentially what did happen. Yeah, that elevator gate was probably the right time to duck out, really, and you probably shouldn't have come back because it's never gonna be what it was. Yeah, the intervening years, you had. I mean, there was sort of a bubbling need for a new target in a sense because in the old days, all of the old creationist types that the atheist, skeptic people would go after sort of had been done and they'd gone away. You know, Venom Fang X had sort of disappeared, and A lot of the more antagonistic pricks had gone away, and so you have you have you had a need for a new enemy, and so when Elevator Gate happened, you had a sort of a ready-made replacement in feminism and SJWism to replace that need for someone to pwn, and that's ultimately the problem. Is it wasn't so bad when it was fighting against creation, because there was a kind of intellectual edge there, that even though you were doing pwnage, you were doing it through actual research. You weren't just saying, oh my god, these people are feminazis, oh look, trigger people off. Look, it was an actual debate or a conversation that had been had for centuries, of course, because there's no new arguments involved outside of new scientific information. There's no actual new argument, but it's an intellectual discussion nonetheless. Whereas this anti-feminist feminist thing was just scummy, and so what they decided to do was abandon rationality and take up with people they had some common cause with, which is the neo-Nazi white nationalist community. So fuck them.
So, because like I actually got a tweet from a friend of mine who was like, she doesn't do YouTube anymore, but she had one of those channels back in the day, and she just sent me a message saying like, man, do you remember when like the worst person on YouTube was Venom Fang X? And today
Yeah,
he'd
exactly.
probably be like, he's like, probably a cuddly rabbit by today's standards.
Well, he's come back, and he's still saying the same old shit, but he's irrelevant now because he is awash in a sea of right wing scumminess. I mean, what he does is, yeah, it is a really fluffy version of the same shtick that you see from a million of these quote unquote skeptics. They don't. There's nothing remarkable about Venom Fang X, even though, like you say, back in the day he was like public enemy #1, whereas now he's a pussycat by comparison.
But like even thinking about it back then, like even before he like had his meltdown, he was just like kind of this. I mean, he was spouting some terrible ideas, but he was like probably just some like Sunday school teacher kid who, like, he was really young and everything. And I don't know. It just, now I feel kind of gross for what he went through. And now, even though,
Well, I can understand it to an extent because he was saying horrific shit, but yeah, he was a kid. Excuse what he did because he's a kid. Whereas, look, as we've mentioned, Carl and TJ and Bearing and all these other people are middle-aged men.
mm-hmm.
You've got to wake up and well, not just wake up. You've got to grow up at some point.
Yeah. But they also make me think too, this is something that comes to mind. And I imagine that, I think I've heard you say this in a video before, but you can say if you agree or disagree. But seeing these kinds of people also realize like, oh man, I was like 1, 2, or 3 bad turns away from being a horrible monster. And I'm glad I just like got out when I did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can see a lot in them, or can see a lot in my younger self that is like, I could have gone down that road. It wouldn't have taken, like you say, it wouldn't have taken much deviation from the path I did go down for me to end up in that place. It really wouldn't, because this is the thing, angry young men exist, and it's not actually always entirely a negative thing, because angry young men can do incredible, brave, heroic things, but they can also just use that energy to become hateful monsters. And in an era where in the West we've faced an unparalleled level of comfort, they just take this energy and pour it out into pure, undiluted bile against people they perceive as trying to take away their privilege. But that's what it is. They're their fucking privilege.
Yeah, I mean, there's a historical truism that basically like the most extreme parts of the world are extremism is a function of young men who are unemployed. And that's the reason that like FDR, when he did his jobs program, got a bunch of the young men who were unemployed and like gave them these really hard labor jobs working in like national parks in the middle of the forest, because he was worried about another like Bolshevik party rising up or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the old saying was that the devil makes work for idle hands. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got some sort of gainful way of spending your life, you're not going to turn to. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily, because for many reasons, describe these people as akin to the Bolsheviks or whatever, but you're not going to turn to any level of extremism or anything like that if you've got a worthwhile life worth leading, which these people don't.
So I think we
And
just
actually, I
blamed
think
the United Shitlords on neoliberalism.
basically, yes. I mean, basically, that is actually true. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've the boomer slash Gen X fuckery of the modern generation has led to a lot of disenfranchisement with the system, to the point where these people, even though many of them even describe themselves as nationalists, clearly despise everything about the place they live and the people they live around. And they're just externalizing a lot of self-hatred based upon the fact that they've achieved nothing with their lives. Which, that, I mean, to be honest, very few people actually do achieve much with their lives in terms of like greatness that they'll be remembered for. Very few people will ever be remembered. And that's something of an existential crisis that comes often in middle age as well. But when that's accompanied by the fact that no one around you seems to be doing anything great as well, there's a kind of malaise in young people in the West, which I think which is why you can see younger people going toward the right actually in places like France, where young people were the most likely to vote for the fascist Marine Le Pen, and in Holland, a lot of young people voted for the fascist Geert Wilders.
Gosh.
They're being offered, and this is the blueprint for fascism in general. You're offering people easy answers to very complicated issues. You're offering them easy scapegoats, where scapegoats aren't actually fucking helpful.
That's a good definition of fascism right there.
Yeah, I mean that's basically how it rises, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying actually Germany's in a really bad state because of the economic sanctions and the country being destroyed after the war and so on and so forth, you say, oh, it's the Jews. Nice and simple, easy to blame. A group that have been historically looked upon negatively anyway, so you've already got a breeding ground for that. And then just say, oh, it's all the Jews' fault. And everyone goes, yeah, okay, let's do that. And it's the most destructive war in the history of mankind. Thanks.
So I do have one request here to. This is about a debate that I didn't watch. I don't know if you have. Somebody named. All right. I don't know if I'm going to butcher this name. Zexizi.
Oh yes, yeah, the young
and
middle.
Sargon did a debate, and I'm asked for thoughts, but I don't think I've watched this.
No, well, I haven't watched it, but I've seen a lot about it. Actually, it was slightly more than just those two. It was socialism versus capitalism debate, and there was Zizi, or however you pronounce his name. He was a young British guy. I think he's a student. Who was a Marxist Leninist, and then there's a guy called the Finnish Bolshevik, who, as the name would suggest, is a Finnish Bolshevik, and Bad Mouse Productions, who I don't know if you're aware of him.
Oh, I'm very much so.
Yeah. Those three were arguing in favour of socialism, although they all have three different interpretations of what socialism is or should be, but whatever. And they were arguing against Sargon, Academic Agent, and some other dude on Sargon's channel. And I haven't watched it, but apparently this is easy. And actually, Zizi is already shown himself to be a prick anyway, because he went to the Sargon hangout and was pictured drunkenly hugging Sargon, which is interesting. But also, he did a hangout with Evalian, who you may know. She was the Nazi girl who got a channel banned last year because she was doing Hitler birthday cakes.
No, this is new to me.
Oh yeah, she's a really fascinating character. She, like I say, she was a Nazi. Well, she still fucking is a Nazi, but she was an out and out Nazi then. Her channel was banned because she was doing Hitler birthday cakes. She was doing birthday cakes for Hitler with his face on it and stuff, and saying horrifically racist things. And the channel got shut down, and it was a big-ish thing not that long ago. But now she's actually a fan of Stalin, which is an interesting flip. She seems to like mass murderers, it would appear. That's her thing. She seems to enjoy that. But then she's still as anti-Semitic, which is interesting because apparently if you're going to be a socialist, I've never quite understood that, an anti-Semitic socialist. You think,
Yeah.
well, you do realise that most of the thought leaders in socialist history have been Jewish. I mean, Marx was a an educated Jew. Why do you hate these people? It's it's very strange.
Yeah. And not to mention that like uh, socialism and Marxism as a concept is supposed to be kind of like post-religious, post-national, post-ethnic. Like
Well, yeah,
it's
but
it's a rejection of all those things.
well, it's supposed to be. But as with anything, like you get religious feminists and things, you think, how can you have these obviously divergent viewpoints in the same head? But that's, I mean, that happens. People are able. The brain is a fascinating and dangerous thing because it could make you believe so many contradictory things clearly because people do.
Mm-hmm. And I thought I know that sometimes I give updates on Canadian politics and such, and I thought that you might find this interesting because I know that I watched your takes on the election that recently happened last month. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going through some political sea changes right now, and we're having a Corbyn moment of our own, in a way.
Oh, okay.
So after the 2015 election, we have three parties that have a decent amount of seats, and it'll be a little strange because we have a Conservative Party, which is you know how that works, but our Labour Party is really small, and then what I think would be the equivalent of the Lib Dems in the UK are pretty much like the dominant party that have run the country forever.
Yeah, is that Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, Justin Trudeau is a liberal, which is like our kind of centrist, center-right type party.
Yeah.
But with Trudeau taking over, the Liberals are the NDP, which is the name of our socialist party, actually had kind of a Blairite type of leader who was trying to become more centrist in order to get government. Lost terribly because he got outflanked on the left, and now we're having a leadership race where we have a very one of the leadership candidates is actually she actually took a break from being an MP and went down to the United States to campaign for Sanders. So that's her.
Oh, wow.
Right? And she's doing some really cool stuff, like she's campaigning for party leader while pregnant, which is pretty badass.
That is pretty good. Yeah.
And the other good sign is that the Conservative Party had its leadership race as well. And one of the worst parts about Canadian media is Rebel Media is a Canadian institution.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Old Ezra. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Ezra Levant's wonderful organization. So their preferred candidate lost terribly in the Conservative race, and we kind of got a Ted Cruz type character.
Well, you should have just kept him and had Ted Cruz. That could have happened.
That's true. Yeah, it was a weird thing because like the Conservatives were fighting over whether or not they're going to be socially conservative anymore.
Oh, right.
And
I think a lot of conservative parties around the world are having that problem at the moment. They want to remain anti-gay, anti-trans, and all of that sort of thing. They're banning pornography and such, but they realise that society isn't moving that way and hasn't been for a long time.
yeah, well, we had two right-wing parties that merged about a decade ago, and in the merge, they've only had one leader since, and he's resigned. So in that time, the new leader kind of tried to repress the social conservative stuff and just didn't talk about it, and just was like never bringing that kind of stuff up. And this new leader, who, let's just I'll round it. He's from a very rural place, and he has 5 children. Which says a little bit about what this guy's about. And he's the first
about fucking.
he's the first anti-choice Canadian party leader for like 2 decades, and it's a little scary. But I don't know if we're. But the race did end up with us having an active rejection of a woman named Kelly Leach, who was is kind of like our EDL, Marine Le Pen, Donald Trump type figure, and she got actively rejected.
Well, that's awesome. That's always good, because I mean, I can tolerate living under like a conservative government. Obviously, I have to, because I live in Britain. It's a conservative government, and I can just about tolerate that. Whereas someone like, like I don't know this individual in question, but I'll take the comparison you draw seriously. That kind of far rightist bigotry, I can't be dealing with that in a government. I know these people exist, but as long as they're essentially fringe nut jobs, I can, that's not the end of the world. But I was just thinking actually, with you saying someone campaigning whilst pregnant. One tactic the Conservatives could use against that person is saying, well, in a few months' time, she's going to increase the unemployment of Canada by 1, which would be, I think, would be a winning tactic, because picking on pregnant women works.
I mean, they could try, but I recently watched the kind of party debate. They had a televised party debate and like leadership debate, and maybe this is just my bias, but she basically like went up against 3 dudes and took them all down a peg for all just being kind of like waffly, not centrist, but waffly, like not trying to say the S
That's
word.
not fair, because if she's pregnant, that's not 1-on-1 anymore. That's 1-on-1 and a bit. So that's just not fair. It's not a fair fight at all.
She's got those like.
Exactly. She's eating for 2 and she's arguing for 2. It's ridiculous.
But it was pretty fun to see. I might be meeting her next month, which will be really fun.
Oh, cool. That's always good. Actually, it was nice. I've a couple of people I know on the internet met with well, I say met with. They went to events where Corbyn was speaking during the election, and apparently the crowds were amazing.
He seems pretty friendly. I haven't. He's one of those people that I've only ever read about him. I don't think I've ever like seen any stuff that's like written by him or anything, like any of his own speeches.
Well, that's the thing. There's a bizarre thing where if you listen to him speak, he doesn't sound anything like his rabid detractors, but he also doesn't necessarily also sound much like his rabid supporters. There's this look. He's one of the most misrepresented people in modern politics. He's slightly more to the left of your average social democrat, really, in a lot of ways. That's the policy platform he put forward. He doesn't necessarily. I think he would like to be more to the left, but knows that Britain is such a conservative place that you can't realistically be much more to the left.
I mean, England has its moments, or should I say, you guys get pulled to the left by Scotland somewhat.
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm against Scottish independence, because I get why the Scots would want independence, but from my perspective, wing Scottish MPs, and they are even the Tory party in Scotland is essentially centrist by British overall standards, because Scotland's a much more left wing place. Without those MPs in Parliament, it's eternal Tory rule.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no chance of any progressive government getting in.
Although I don't imagine that the PM is a big fan. I don't think there's that much wheat up in Scotland, so she wouldn't be able to traverse the region very easily.
Yeah, that was involved. For those who don't know, I'll explain that briefly. She was asked a question during the election campaign, and she's such a robotic, unlikable character. She was asked a question: what's the naughtiest thing you ever done, or some of the most rebellious thing you ever done? And she couldn't think of anything appropriate to say. Look, obviously, the true answer is probably something like, I once did poppers and had a 4-way with 3 black dudes. It was amazing. That's probably the truth of it. In college, I once sucked off a horse or something. There's something crazy. Whereas what she actually said was fields of wheat, which is nothing. That no one believes that.
I wish that someone had thought to ask that question to David Cameron, because then maybe he would have said something about his predilection for bacon.
Yeah, Yeah, did you know I once stuck my genitals into a dead pig's mouth?
I reenacted the pilot for Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Oh man, like it was too perfect. Like that
Did you-
episode of
did you
Black Mirror
know-
existed, and that story comes out, and it's like it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. Did you know I'm banned from several butcher's shops in Oxford? I
Several
can't
what?
tell you.
Oh,
Butchers.
David Cameron.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But that's the thing. That's what's one of the problems with Theresa May. It's not just her politics are awful. She's a condescending fuck as well. Like I remember when she was asked what Brexit means or what Brexit she wants, and she said, "We want a red, white, and blue Brexit." Oh, fuck off! Don't talk to us like we're 12. Yeah, obviously those being the colours of the British flag. Yeah, I just thought that's so condescending. Don't talk to us like we're 12. We're adults. Please explain what you want to do. I know and you know and everyone knows you don't know what you're fucking doing. None of you do. But at least pretend. At least give us some semblance of hope that you do have some plan ahead. Don't just give us platitudes, because that's just confirming that you're full of shit.
Oh man, I imagine I don't envy being in her position these days. I imagine she's looking at Parliament and looking at what she's got to deal with the next couple of years. Oh,
She's not going to be Prime Minister in 2 years. Just there's no chance. Absolutely no fucking chance.
do you think that there'll be like a? Do you guys do like commonly dissolving government and such?
Well, this is the thing. There's no way the Conservatives are going to be able to sustain this Parliament, because they're going to lose too many votes. It's just too tight, even with the 10 bribed Northern Irish bigots, which is an interesting description, which you should look into. It's a fascinating story. But even with that, the Parliament isn't going to last, because they know they can't get anything even remotely, just even slightly controversial through. And so, but the Tories, given how badly the last election campaign went, and it was about as bad as you can imagine, they're not going to allow her to fight another campaign as leader. So they're going to have a leadership campaign, and then presumably not too long after that, a general election. And I would be surprised if it didn't happen before, or at least during next summer.
I've been there before. How well whipped are the Tories? Like, do they vote as a bloc, or do they often have defectors?
Occasionally, they can be sort of corralled into an absolutist line, but on the defining issue of the day, Brexit, because most of the Tory MPs, even though the Tory party and their supporters by and large were very pro leaving the EU, I think about half and half, I think it was, Tory MPs campaigned to remain. But you've also got a small-ish but large enough to bring down the government bloc of Tories who are so rabidly anti anything that isn't them. Basically, they despise the foreigner, the EU, anyone from outside. It doesn't matter what deal she does. There's no way it could get through Parliament, and there does have to be a parliamentary vote. So there's just no fucking way that they can possibly go through the whole Brexit process in this Parliament, because the Parliament, even if the Parliament somehow did manage to stumble on to the point where the end of the negotiations happened, the vote would be lost. There's no fucking way in this world that vote's getting through that Parliament. It's not possible.
Yeesh. Actually, I know how that feels a little bit though. When I think I had like for about maybe 3 or 4 years, we were having an election about every 18 months because we kept getting minority governments that kept getting votes of non-confidence.
Yeah, you're having essentially the Italian problem, where in Italy, because they've got proportional representation, they have such phenomenally weak government that every government is a coalition, which crumbles because economically Italy is a basket case. So you can't ever have like a good stretch. Up until Renzi took over, they'd had more. I think they'd had more governments than they'd had years since the end of the Second World War, because they just crumble every few. Ridiculous.
Well, Justin, we were talking about having proportional representation fairly recently, and Justin Trudeau killed it despite making it a campaign promise because I don't know, he's dedicated to making sure that every single thing he campaigned on, he does the exact opposite of what he says he'll do.
Yeah, apparently he's from what I gather, he's a do-nothing who only ever does stuff that he said he wouldn't do, which is an interesting description.
Yeah, he's a self-described feminist who sold weapons to Saudi Arabia and then tried to like blame the Tories for it, but then the Tory, like, it turns out that they had pushed it through. He said he was going to get rid of the first past post election and then promptly turned his back on it. And yeah, he's but he looks so good on the international scene. Everyone loves him in like
that's the thing. It's because internal politics are only really cared about by and large by the people in that place, because that's who it largely affects. Outside of maybe the big places like America, but people only ever see like the image
and he's
of
pretty.
that person, and he's pretty, he's well spoken. He looks like the models from like a fashion magazine or something. He just looks awesome. You think that's a world leader. Are you sure? Are you sure he shouldn't be on like a catwalk or something? What the fuck?
And he says all the right things.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, he's well spoken, and clearly he knows how to play politics, if not necessarily how to do politics. Yeah, he's very impressive from that perspective. But apparently, in terms of actually governing, he's a bag of shite. Which,
yeah, we're probably gonna have another election in 2019, and we'll see how that all shakes out. I do have a couple of questions that come from the chat. So someone was asking, this is another part about the conservative leadership race I didn't get into, but there was a guy, and I think you'd find this guy very amusing, so I'll tell you a little about him. Have you ever heard of Kevin O'Leary?
No.
Okay, so Kevin O'Leary was running for leadership of the Conservative Party for a while during the leadership race. It ended just maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And he was the host of a TV show called Dragon's Den.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was one of like the kind of hosts on that show. And then also, while he was campaigning for leadership of the Conservative Party, he's like a multi-billionaire, but also he was often...
So he was actually one of the dragons, one of the rich people investing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
He said on CBC, which is our version of the BBC, he would say stuff like how he thought that inequality was great and that being, that it made people aspirational and all that kind of stuff. But then he spent a lot of time during his time when he was kind of running as a Tory leader in the United States on like American news networks commenting on how much he liked Trump. And then he would also, he doesn't speak French, which is kind of a prerequisite. It's not like an official prerequisite, but you have to at least speak some amount of French to be prime minister.
Yeah, well, because there are French people there.
Yeah, they're a significant part of the population. And he did not know French, so he actually entered the race right after the one French debate for the Conservative Party.
That's genius.
And he was like,
how does that work though? How would that work if you got in though? Because you couldn't just pretend that French people weren't there in Canada in general. Surely you can't ignore the Frenchness forever.
No, but also what you can do is do what the Tories have done for a long time, which is not rely on French votes.
I presume that was probably how they worked, because it seems incongruent to have that kind of rightist politics whilst also accepting the obviously multicultural nature of Canada. That seems like an impossible thing to master, that balance.
All right, I know that this will lead to an instant joke, but just pretend that Scottish people didn't speak English.
Have you seen a Goodfellow video?
Yeah, I know, but imagine if Scottish people didn't speak English, and then you had somebody run for the leader of the Tories who did not feel like they needed to learn how to speak Scottish, and
well, the Tories don't care about Scotland anyway, so I mean that probably wouldn't hurt them in that race, but it would hurt them in electoral politics in general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the thing is, and I mean, like the last prime minister that the Conservatives had, you probably remember Stephen Harper a little bit. He
Yeah, absolutely.
he spoke French, but it was really bad. And I think that was like the conservative like bottom line. Like you have to be able to speak French because televised there's televised debates during federal elections where the questions are all in French. And occasionally you'll have to, answer a random French question. And I imagine that even if you don't speak, or even if you're not a French speaker, watching somebody completely like blank or just ignore a question in a debate would make you look bad. So that would have been the big issue, I think.
Yeah, I dare say, yeah, absolutely. Although I understand the historical nature of it and everything, but it seems so odd to have two sets of people who speak different languages in the one nation.
Yeah, I mean, it's
just because I'm not
cool.
used to it.
Yeah, it's you can thank the 7 Years' War for that one. We're basically a product of it. But it's like that we have many provinces that are more or less just English provinces with small French-speaking like communities that are very rural, and then we have one province that's fully bilingual because it's about half and half French and English, and then we have one province that is more or less all French. Like it's 80% French speaking, and French is their official language. So the languages are very well segregated to kind of have that situation.
Yeah, but like you said, on a federal level, you have to have presumably every service has to be available in French and English or whatever. Although that happens here to a degree in parts of say rural Wales. They have English and Welsh as two different languages. Like I remember going to a bank machine in Wales and it asked me which language I wanted it in, and it really took me back. I was like, "What? Well, English, obviously. What? I don't speak well." But you think, well, some people do.
That's surprising.
So whatever.
Did you make a bank machine with a screen big enough to handle the Welsh language?
Yeah, I presume their words for money are shortened because there are. Yeah, there's the Welsh language is and full of phlegm. Basically, it's a very weird one. But there you go.
I always think of, whenever I think of Welsh, I think of that Mitchell and Webb skit of Padlucky Gummy.
Oh yeah, Padlucky Gummy, and he's got the little ducks on the thing.
Bob Smith and Ben Manyworth. It's like, oh goodness. I imagine that there were some Welsh people who weren't happy about that.
You're quite well versed in English TV. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah. It's in spite of popular culture. Like, it's a hobby of mine.
But this is the thing that I think people, and I think it's the same with everywhere. When you get that foreign, cultural influence, you only ever see like the best that country has to offer, because that's the bit that gets exported because you can make money out of it. But most of the British TV is trash. It's fucking awful.
Yeah. We have a thing where, because we're so close to the United States, we have like active protection of Canadian art. And so very often, like, there's a law where if you're a Canadian channel, you have to have at least 1/3 of your content Canadian, which means that some really, really, really bad stuff gets on like television networks and the radio because, we're required to fill this space. That's how Nickelback started.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah, that and Bieber, Canada's got some questions to answer, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, I've noticed that a significant amount of the MRA movement is Canadian, and I'm very surprised by that.
There are actually, yeah, there are a lot of Canadian MRAs. I was thinking about this the other day, actually. You've got Karen Strawn and
Armored Skeptic.
Armored Skeptic, of course, yeah.
What's that all-lady MRA podcast that got kicked out of something?
The Honey Badgers, yeah. The Honey Badgers. You've got Alison Teeman and is it the Canadian Association for Equality, which is an MRA front group.
Mm-hmm. Is Paul Elam Canadian?
No, Paul Elam's a Texan, right?
Okay. And then you also have in the middle, kind of, Woolly Bumblebee. Is she Canadian?
No, well, she is, but she's not an MRA anymore. Like she's essentially become a human being now. I actually quite like her.
Last I remembered is that she was like kind of in the middle still. So I don't. That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. She used to work for A Voice for Men, or work with The Voice for Men, whatever. But no, she's I think she's seen the error of her ways. But yeah, you've also got John the Other and Feminism Lol, who were a Canadian couple.
Wait, if Armored Skeptic is Canadian, does that mean that Shoe on Head is too, or is she like moved to Canada, or?
Well, I don't know quite what their living arrangements are, but Shoe on Head's American.
Okay. I also have a request to ask about YouTubers United. YouTubers United is no longer happening. We canceled it because of time. Sorry, it was just a PSA.
Yeah, that's cool.
So continue your point, sorry.
No, I'd finished. I was basically saying I don't know who's moved where or what's happened. But yeah.
Okay.
You're an international couple.
Someone named Theron Meyer. Is that?
Yeah. Well, she's actually, I mean, she lives in Canada, but she's not actually, well, she might be a Canadian citizen now, I don't know. But she's a really interesting one. She was originally South African, and she's a trans femme who now lives in Canada.
Trans MRA, is that like Blair White or something else?
Yeah, she's a prototype Blair White, although they've actually fallen out because even Blair was too much for Theron. Even though she, like I said, trans femme she was like, well, you're being a bit transphobic there, Blair. And they had a falling out. Well, actually, I did a debate about 2 years ago with Theron, and she was okay. She was, a nice enough person.
All these people usually end up being fairly nice when the cameras are off.
Yeah, actually, I've noticed that. But virtually everyone I've ever debated on an interpersonal level has been pleasant. But it's just their opinions which are appalling. That's the problem.
Well, they're doing a Alex Jones for money, right? Maybe.
Possibly. I mean, but also, there's nothing necessarily wrong bigging up the character or being kind of hamming it up for the camera as part of the act. That's fine because that makes it for entertaining stuff. It's when you go to the level of bullying and harassing people that's not okay.
Oh man. So I also first asked for my thoughts on Japanese politics. Wouldn't even know where to start.
All I really know is that it amused me when Shinzo Abe appeared at the closing ceremony of the Brazil Olympics as Mario. That was fun. That actually happened.
I know that they do proportional representation, and then they have like 12, 13, or 14 political parties with seats, and then they get into like 3 major coalitions. That's about all I really know, and that they've recently gotten more militarized.
I don't know much about the parties, but I'm going to be really annoyed if they don't have like a ninja party in Japan. That would be annoying.
I imagine they all have mascots.
Yeah, probably creepy tree monsters and little girls in skirts, I imagine. I don't watch much Japanese cartoons. My brother does. He's big into his Japanese cartoon shite. But
I just know that Japan does a lot of like mascots for like civil services and like government stuff, and like each like administrative district has its own mascot. So I was just putting a bit together there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but Japan's a very strange place. The MRAs actually have a weird thing for. I think they're called the grass people or something. They're essentially a kind of extremist Japanese version of MGTOWs, where they've literally sworn off dating completely and are refusing to get involved in any of this. And they hold this up as like the example of feminism has ruined the world,
Yeah, well, Japan in some ways has a lot of things going on in that country that the MGTOWs and MRAs would actually really like, and are kind of suffering as a result, because it still has it still clings to a very patriarchal kind of relationship, especially when it comes to like women in work. And the kind of expectations of women in life. And also they have a very closed off immigration policy.
Yeah.
And those two things are leading to like demographic collapse.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that about the white nationalists always bring up Japan as an example, but all you have to point out is look at the collapse that's happening there. This is a fucking stagnating, broken country in many ways. Again, I'm looking at it from the outside, but that's what the numbers seem to be saying, and a lot of people in Japan who I've talked to seem to be hinting at this, that actually it's led to a stagnation in Japan, which is disastrous. Because you can't just stand still as a nation, especially when it's a global world we live in now. You can't be on your own. Look at basically the two nations that are examples of this for different reasons, of course, are Japan and North Korea. And those are two broken countries to varying degrees, of course, and for different reasons. But isolation is a bad thing. That's the thing. Ultimately, even if we ignore the morality of the white nationalist shite for a second and just look at the practicalities of it, that's not a system that's going to work. It's just not. It's not practical and it's not helpful. So fucking shut up, you idiots.
Yeah. And there's a mutually beneficial thing. Like there's parts of, like, especially when it comes to immigration, that like right at this moment, we're in this kind of period where we're industrializing and deindustrializing at different rates. And so there's parts of the world that are aging, and then there's parts of the world that are going through a massive population boom where they have a lot of people who want to do amazing things, but they are limited by the resources and abilities of the countries they're in. And so it's like a natural fit for like large amounts of immigration going on right now. And it will be a good thing because it helps them kind of, those countries spread their kind of soft power, you know, building up culture and getting like their thought leaders out in the world and making great things that they can take home with them. But also, it's, you know, in these kind of Asian countries, a demographic collapse as well.
And it's a natural wealth redistribution as well, because those people earn money in those countries and send a lot of it home to family and friends who are financial trouble at home.
Yeah, the best news for Rory and Rory's family is that there's like an expectation. This is the fun part, is that by the end of the 21st century, there's expected that French is going to be the most spoken language on Earth, which is pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah, well, Rory Katz, bless him. I don't think he's going to last to the end of the century, I'll be honest.
Look, his progenitors,
he's
his
pretty
family.
badass. Yeah, no, the vet took care of that problem.
Other French cats.
Yeah, other French cats. Thomas O'Malley, for the niche reference there, who was a cat from the Aristocats, the Disney movie of the 50s, I think it was. Anyway,
to make a really British joke about it, if this trend continues, our horses are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah, well yeah, they did. Well, they eat fucking horses, yes. Which actually, I think that goes back, doesn't it, to the Paris Commune, wasn't it, when they were encircled by the Prussian army, and they took to eating animals, including horses.
Yeah, actually, the reason why French is going to be one of the biggest languages is because there's a huge population explosion that's likely to happen in West Africa, where there's a lot of French-speaking countries.
Yeah.
Like Nigeria is having a huge population boom right now, and they speak English on top of like a bunch of local languages, but Cote d'Ivoire and like Senegal and them, are predicted to go through similar population explosions in the next century, when like a lot of the big population boom countries that we think of now, like China and India, are kind of starting to hit their crest of maximum population growth. And so there's expected to be like a kind of decline in like India and China as being these big population growth countries, and like West Africa really taking off over like the next few decades.
Perhaps so, but I mean, if that starts happening, then all I can suggest is the English need to get the red coats back on and invade some bitches. It needs to happen. We can't be having French spoken more widely. That's not acceptable. No.
Oh, I don't know. I love throwing out little jokes like that.
I love throwing out little jokes like that because there are so many people who I know are idiotic enough that they'll think, "Oh, it is there," and leave a comment saying, "Oh, you evil bastard!" I was obviously joking, you fool. But
Yes, yes. God save the Queen.
no, well, I'm not saying that, even as a
Yeah.
joke.
Kevin Logan, social democrat, British imperialist.
Well, exactly, yeah, exactly. That's the way I look at it. You've got to civilize these French people. It's ridiculous.
You start with actually, you know what? I bet you could get the British people behind that if you chose one country, one French-speaking country to start with that I think the British have been wanting to put in their place for a while. And that, of course, is Belgium.
Well, Belgium or France will do. That's fine. Basically, Europe in general, I think.
This is like a thing that comes up a lot, maybe following British comedy and stuff, but British people really like making fun of Belgium.
Well, it's not really a country. That's the problem. It's sort of a mishmash of different things. It's basically some French people and some Dutch people who don't really like each other pretend to be in a country. It's ridiculous. What's going on there, lad?
That reminds me of the first time I ever saw Nigel Farage in the media.
Oh, please don't compare me to scum like that. Jesus Christ.
No, but the thing you were saying about Belgium there, it's like that's the first time I ever heard about Nigel Farage was when he was saying like, we don't like you, we don't want you. You're basically from Belgium, which is pretty much a non-country, and like he called this like guy the like quiet assassin of European democracy or something. Do you remember this incident?
Well, he says so much inflammatory shit all the time that I can't remember. And he's offended everyone for every reason, so it could be any time.
I also don't know the story behind this, but didn't he get in some sort of weird plane crash?
He did actually, yeah. I was on I think it might even have been the day of the 2010 general election, where he was in a light aircraft traveling. You know, they hop around the country doing events and stuff, and it crashed into a field. He survived, unfortunately. No, that's a joke. That is a joke. I'm only being horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he survived and he was fine in the end. But there's in my moments of Schadenfreude, I occasionally look at the pictures of his bloodied face as he's being dragged away from that incident and laugh because fuck him.
Especially now, isn't he moving to the United States?
Well, there's contradictory stories all the time. He's obviously big friends with Donald Trump, which is embarrassing for both of them. But he's now apparently wants to possibly, because Brexit looks like, and it genuinely looks like it might not actually happen. I don't know. It's in such a shambles at the moment. Who knows what's going to happen even
Brexit?
tomorrow, let alone. Yeah, it's crumbling because no one knows what they're doing genuinely, and it's not just me attacking the Tories. Nobody knows what's happening. No one knows what's going to happen. We're already 3-4 months into the process, and nothing's been decided. No negotiations have taken place of any substance. And there's a time limit on these things, which can be extended, but have to be extended by every country involved by vote, and that's not going to happen. So it's possible that, and if it comes to a situation where there's no deal at the end of it, I can absolutely see Parliament voting to remain part of the European Union because it's not the vote itself. The people's vote wasn't legally binding upon Parliament.
Yeah, and I could also imagine though that if they tried to do anything, that like Macron and Merkel would probably be pretty dead set on punishing the UK as hard as possible to make sure no other country thinks of doing this again.
Well, that's the thing, actually. Yeah, it was a point made by the Remain side and should have been pushed more forcefully that come negotiation time, yeah, it's in everyone's interest in Europe to punish Britain to try and keep everyone else, all the other countries that might think about it, from doing anything. So they're not going to give you a deal that you can sell to the British people. And it's possible that we might not reach any deal, in which case Parliament, I think it would be incumbent upon them to take the sensible option, even though it's the anti-democratic option, of course, but the sensible option for the country and say, well, actually, let's stay where we are for now.
Maybe that's what a red, white, and blue is.
Possibly so. But I mean, she won't be Prime Minister to see either way, so it really doesn't matter for her. I mean, she will go down as one of the worst Prime Ministers of recent times because she's just been, And it's a shame because I like to see female leaders as a feminist, of course, but she's been dreadful. She really has been fucking dreadful.
Yeah, it's not really helping the cause.
No, she's not putting the best foot forward, really. But there you go.
Like the best part about having, you know, representation and having more women as like leaders of countries is that they'll do stuff that, you know, for good causes. Like it's not like an
Well, yeah,
empty victory. It's like, you
we,
know, women will
yeah,
govern differently because they have, you know, a different life experience that they can bring to the table. But like,
but this is also a conservative woman, so let's not pretend for a second that she's some sort of women's liberationist. She's
mhm.
just a she's just a Tory who happens to also have a vagina. That's the only difference, really. There's no like she calls herself a feminist, but doesn't mean a damn thing. That's a joke, basically.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the internet, calling yourself a feminist is like the baseline. Like that's like, you know, just to say, I yes, I am a person who believes in basic human dignity.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Actually, the worth pointing out to these shitlord dicks is that actually they rule the roost here on YouTube, but YouTube's a very small part of the world.
Hmm.
The,
Yeah,
they own the political corner of YouTube, I should say, which again is a
yeah,
small part of YouTube, which is a small part of the world.
yeah. I think Kat Black's place, like most recent video or one of her more recent videos, talked a bit about that, where like because all of the Carl of Swindon um, stuff that he got up to with like intimidating Anita Sarkeesian and stuff at VidCon, when like Kat Black and like Anita Sarkeesian were complaining to like the people who ran VidCon. The people who ran VidCon were like, "We've never heard of these people. Oh, sorry, we didn't plan ahead."
Yeah, that's fair.
And I don't.
Because this is the thing. TJ is probably the biggest, but he's not the worst necessarily. But outside of that, you've got say Carl, who's got what 600,000 subscribers. That's nothing in modern YouTube terms. That's nothing really.
Mhm.
There are channels way bigger than that, way more influential than that.
I feel really bad. I have a copy. I gave a copy of TJ's book to a used bookstore, and I feel really bad for that used bookstore that it's there.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it gets cold in Canada. You could have burnt it.
That's true. I would have had Fahrenheit 451 flashbacks though, and I don't think I would have done
You wouldn't have got that hot. Don't be silly.
it. Oh man. But yeah, I just like dropped. I when I moved out of my place, because I moved from a townhouse to a flat, I had to get rid of a lot of stuff, and I had to throw out probably like 2/3 of my books, maybe 3/4 of my books. And I found that amongst like the wreckage, and I was like, "Holy crap! I can't believe that this was still in my
Which one of
bookshelf."
his? But was it douchebag Bible, or whatever?
No, no, it was like everything is evil or evil is good, or it's like the first one.
Yeah, okay. Because he's
Um,
written several terrible books, but
yeah, I don't. I guess I must have bought it back in like my less than, you know, my childish days, and I just
yeah. Well, back in the day, TJ. I mean, he was always an arse, but he wasn't like he was at least a vaguely sort of liberally kind of almost progressive dude who was also a twat. And you could kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'll watch his videos. It's not the end of the world. Whereas now he's just, I mean, he literally said he asked people or um, advised people to vote for Donald Trump. So I mean, he's
mhm.
scum.
I also have I have Eternal Undying Love, and I will never throw that out because it is like the room of novels. This is the
Sorry,
novel
what was
by
that? You
Brett
broke.
Keane.
Sorry, you broke up there. Sorry, what did you say?
Oh,
Sorry.
I have a copy at my parents' house of Eternal Undying Love, the novel by Brett Keane,
Oh, good lord. Okay.
and it is like I said that I want to keep it because it's like a masterpiece of awful. Like it's like the room of novels.
Well, I'm currently I don't know when I'm going to do my second episode of it, but I'm currently reading through some works by War Corpse on my channel, and oh my god,
I know that
he's
you did some
stu-
videos where you were going through like the preview, but did you actually bite the bullet and buy one of his books?
I didn't buy one, but I got hold of some copies.
Oh,
And but
nice.
also I did the debate with him under the auspices that he wanted a debate and I wanted um, a copyright and royalty-free access to all of his works for my own YouTube channel, and he agreed to that deal. So I can now read his entire oeuvre, and I will, and it's so poor. It's not even just that it's bad content; it's so poorly written.
He seems like an easy person to outsmart.
I Rory Cats would outsmart him, yes.
Oh man, he's like
this is a cat that falls off. He's a fascinating character. Like I can genuinely sit down and watch a YouTube video, his YouTube stuff, and be entertained. Not in the way that he wants me to be entertained. He wants me to think, like to enjoy his critical analysis of the situation or something like that. But it's actually the best unintentional comedy out there. It's brilliant because it's so thick. He's the stupidest human being alive. He's wonderful.
The best part of the War Corps experience. One is the bookshelf that's full of video games, but not many books. And I think the star on top is his newsroom setup where he has the clocks in the different time zones.
He got rid of those recently, unfortunately, because he realised people were mocking him for that. Yeah, he did. He put up, at first it was 4, and then he changed it to 8 clocks behind him as if he was a fucking news reporter. And they were all like set at different times for like, oh, this is the time in New York, and this is the time in wherever, London or whatever.
Sometimes these days, sometimes I could, if I was like a bit more like larger as a YouTuber and doing more social media stuff, I could almost see the need to know what time it was in like LA and in London, but come on.
Yeah, he needs Sota, and that's it. That's literally it. He doesn't need to know the time anywhere. He's ridiculous. But yeah, he's fascinating. He's for the volume of work he's produced, his subscriber count is ludicrously low. He's almost got as many videos as he has subs because he puts no effort in whatsoever. He puts no effort in.
I have a question for you, and this is something that I've been genuinely worried about, and I hope that this isn't true. Are you running out of Manispherians?
Oh God, no. No.
Okay,
no.
good. Okay, good. I was worried.
I've probably got about, unless like there are probably 1 or 2 that pop in and go to the top of the queue, as it were, the front of the queue. But there's probably about the next dozen or so lined up. I haven't necessarily started actually researching those people, but they're there on the list. Yeah.
That's good. Have you done? I can't remember because laughing at these people, like my introduction to most of the Manosphere comes from the Descent of Man Osphere. So, have you done Mr. Scully Pants, Davis Aurini?
He was the second episode, yeah.
Second episode, right. Okay. He's come back from the dead, I heard. I was seeing some stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, he's the most pretentious human being on Earth, and also sort of quite stupid and ludicrously hateful. Yeah, perfect for the series.
But like, that's apparently he randomly unblocked. He randomly unblocked Harry or H Bomber Guy a while back, and like today, and started yelling at him. And I was like, oh my god, this is the grudge match I've been wanting for like so long.
Stripped to the waist, wrestling. That's what I want to say. That would be amazing. It'd be the whitest thing ever.
But like Davis Aurini, H Bomber Guy, like that's just like the classic thing.
But also, I want to see them wrestle, but with dressed up as his Davis Aurini character, with the weird condom thing on his head or whatever that is, the skull.
What is
thing? Have you not seen in Harry's videos when he does the Davis Aurini character, and he's like it's sort of like a condom and a swimming cap or something, and he puts it over his head to make him look bald, and Woms, which is basically Davis Aurini,
and with a plastic skull.
Oh yeah, MacArthur. You gotta love MacArthur.
Oh man!
And that's actually what people don't seem to realise is that's actually like a thing that writers Sony used to do. It was like a kind of go on like your writing desk on your table to remind you of your own mortality and to remind you that you should spend your time wisely on this earth and all that, which was like an important thing for writers to remember or whatever. But Dave Sorini does that, and you think, well, why do? Because you aren't a good writer. You don't write much, and I mean, it's just pretentious. You're not a writer. I mean, you wrote that one novel, which was basically a Fallout fan fiction novel. And you starred in the worst documentary film that digital film ever produced.
Dreadful. Did you do a video on his very lonely friend who he made that documentary with?
Oh, Jordan Owen. Yeah, I've done several videos with him. Actually, it was Jordan Owen that inspired me to do my Kurt Logan remix of the Sarkeesian Effect, because I was going to do a sit-down watching of the video of the actual movie, the Sarkeesian Effect, the documentary, and with me pausing it and giving commentary as we go along. But the first episode I did of that, which took like the first 10 minutes of the film or whatever, and it was probably going to end up being like a 20-part series or something. But the first episode of that, Jordan Owen threatened to DMCA me. So I said, well, can we come to some sort of reasonable arrangement? He said, yes, I'll remix the episode. Like, I'll take out the bit enough of the actual film to make it fit with like copyright law, and you can put that up. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see what he produces first. And basically, he took out every bit of the film and just left me talking. But I was responding to things that you couldn't see, so it didn't make any fucking sense. So I angrily just went, oh, fuck it then, I'll do a remake of it with like toys and puppets and stuff. That's what I did.
Those guys are like the lowest hanging fruit. Like especially like David Sorini and War Corps, they're almost like cartoon characters.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're cartoonish. Yes, absolutely.
While like people like Mr. of Sweden are like actually dangerous people who we should be legitimately afraid of what they do.
Wary, I would say, rather than afraid. But yes, yeah, I think that's a good analysis. Yeah.
Or worried about the impact they're having. Like yes. I didn't take Carla Swindon super seriously until like I started talking to people where YouTube is their business and seeing that like the actual like damaging effect he's had on their lives and the kind of thing that he's stirring up. And it's like, oh, because it's like,
that's the bad thing, is it's just a game to these people. They don't give a fuck. They don't care the damage they're doing.
But also, it's like his time to shine, because like, Sargon is the face of the post-truth world. He argues very effectively in a post-truth context.
Absolutely, yeah, because he doesn't read anything.
I mean, but he knows how to make things sound like they're saying something and rile up his audience. And that's just as important in a post-truth context. And that's what's really, that's what makes him more of like, I don't see him as like as a goof to be mocked. He's like an actual threat to like, he's probably like going to make a lot of young people say and do a lot of things that they'll regret when they're older.
Probably, yes. I dare say. Yeah. Okay. Well, if we've got anything else left, because I need to get some food at some point.
Alrighty. Well, it's getting to supper time for me too. So, anyways, Kevin, it has been great talking to you. Thank you for making me strike this off a bucket list.
Well, exactly. We've been planning to do this for ages. You asked me ages ago, and I said yes, and then I never got around to it. But you can scratch it off the bucket list, and I hope that bucket list contains better things than talking to me, because that would be.
Yeah. Next will be to get in when you got the what's it called? When your hangout parties start going up again, start kind of coming back into action. Like every time I run into like yours or Christy Winters always having like, there's always these parties going on. I'm like, it's like this clique that I'm like, I want to be in there sometimes.
Yeah, you should. You should definitely come and hang out with us, because it's always fun and a bit silly and cool.
Alrighty.
I don't think we don't generally have a Canadian, so you would tick that box for us.
Nice. So anybody out there, if you have not done so already, Kevin Logan's got a YouTube channel where he basically deals with the evil side of the internet, so you don't have to. So you should go and check him out and subscribe.
And if you're not subscribed, which surely you are because you're watching this on his channel, you should subscribe to Step Back History.
Yay! All right, man. I'm going to push the stop button.